In 1986, economist John Christensen went offshore to investigate. He applied for a position at the Jersey office of one of the world's major accounting firms.
At Deloitte & Touche, I was working in what's called company and trust administration, straightforward offshore stuff. I went offshore specifically to work in that area because that's where you're dealing with the offshore companies, the shell companies, the offshore trusts, and you're administering them. That way I could see from working inside a big global accounting firm exactly what the clients were doing. I had complete access to all the client files. And over the course of my period of working with Deloitte Touche, I investigated over 100 of their clients offshore, and this is what I found. There were some insider traders, some market rigging, some avoiding disclosure of conflicts of interest, illicit arms trading, illicit political campaign donations, contract kickbacks, bribery, fraudulent invoicing, trade mispricing, and, at the bottom, tax evasion. Okay? This is what the clients were doing. On the basis of a sample of the clients that I looked at, not a single client was involved in what I would regard as genuinely legitimate activity. They were all involved in some kind of tax dodging or worse.
Secrecy jurisdictions are heavily used for fraudulent and grey area financial activities. Areas where secrecy is not just desirable, but a necessity. Legitimate financial activity has no need for the secrecy offshore havens provide, nor a desire to pay the high fees offshore banks and law firms charge. Today, close to half of the world's secrecy jurisdictions are British dependencies. In public, these jurisdictions claim they are transparent and their financial services sectors are engaged in legitimate financial activities.
Our economy is not based on secrecy. It's based on transparency. It's based on a sound regulatory environment. It's based on good governance and good government with a British government legal system. That's what our financial institutions are based on.
Well, tonight we have a response from the head of Cayman Finance after a group of U.S.-based anti-tax evasion activists announced plans to travel to Cayman to draw attention to what they feel is corporate tax evasion. Finance Chairman Mr. Richard Cole says he's encouraging the group to visit and says our financial sector has nothing to hide.
I would say if anybody wants to come to Cayman to find out what's coming, what we do here, come on down. We have no secrets here.
When I went to the Cayman Islands back in 2008, I think it was, I called the government spokesman and he said, okay, we have had an order from on high that nobody is allowed to speak to you. You are off limits.
In 2011, journalist Nicholas Shaxson released Treasure Islands, a groundbreaking book about the offshore system.
The author of a series of international media reports says he would welcome a debate with Cayman Finance Chair Tony Travers. Mr. Travers recently called Nicholas Shaxson an imbecile with the understanding of an 11-year-old.
There are always going to be the politics of envy. Now, the politics of envy are exacerbated by imbeciles who don't actually understand what's going on in the Cayman Islands. I don't know what he's talking about. And furthermore, he doesn't know what he's talking about.
The Cayman Islands is the 5th largest financial centre in the world. It hosts 80,000 registered companies, over 3/4 of the world's hedge funds, and $1.9 trillion in deposits. It has a population of 60,000, roughly equivalent to New York's homeless population. A strange mixture of characters populate the offshore world. British ex-public schoolboys, members of the world's intelligence services, global criminals, assorted lords and ladies, and bankers galore. With so much at stake for so many wealthy and powerful individuals, it may come as no surprise that Britain's offshore havens have developed their own curious mechanisms to prevent information from leaking out.
For many people who work offshore, and who don't like what they're doing, it's very hard indeed to dissent, because they will be attacked personally with a degree of viciousness which is quite extraordinary. Most of the time, the instruments of suppression are relatively sophisticated. You won't get promotion by doing this, or your family won't like it.
It's not generally, let's slam them in prison. That's far too crude. We are talking about very substantially, the establishment, the British establishment in these cases. The mechanisms are very, very subtle. Sort of ostracism is one way of doing it. These peculiar mechanisms for, if someone tries to blow the whistle, you find all sorts of methods that aren't just fire them, you give them far too much work to do, you steer them in a different direction.
One person who is intimately familiar with how suppression works offshore is former Jersey Senator and Health Minister Stuart Sivray. In 2009, he leaked a report on a rogue nurse suspected of killing patients at Jersey's hospital.
It all came to a head during a state's debate on Tuesday the 10th of March. Senator Stuart Sivray brought the sitting to a standstill, claiming Senator Jimmy Pershard had sworn at him and told him to go and top himself. Senator Pershard denied the claim, saying, "I absolutely refute that." But less than a week later, he was forced to admit he had lied. Senator Pershard has now admitted that on another occasion he did tell Senator Stuart Sivray to go and do everyone a favour and slit his wrists.
I was arrested at my house one morning by 6 plainclothes police officers. There were another 2 specialist data search police officers on hand, and also another 2 police officers in full body armour, one of those battering rams they kind of use in drugs raids. So 10 police officers descended on me without a search warrant. The property was turned over from top to bottom. All of the computers were seized and searched. All kinds of private constituency data was stolen by the police.
Shortly after we began filming, a police officer exited the police station. As he hurried past, he grinned at the camera. The officer was on his way to test the sirens on his motorbike, which he did at intervals throughout much of the remainder of the interview.
When it came to prosecuting me,
Stuart Sivray was prosecuted under the data protection law.
Now, when the authorities were prosecuting me, I claimed that this was a legitimate public interest disclosure defence. And I, with an expert witness, was able to produce a set of reports that effectively destroyed the prosecution case.
In reaction to this, the magistrates ruled that Stuart Sivray's defence case, that he had leaked the report in the public interest, would no longer be admissible, but continued to prosecute him all the same, without a defence case. Over the past 7 years, Stuart Sivray has been repeatedly taken to court and imprisoned 3 times. He does not know when or if the persecution will end, nor does he know when he will find himself behind bars again.
To look at Jersey from the outside, it looks like it's got a prosecution system, it looks like it's got a court and a legislature, but none of it's real. It's a Potemkin village. None of these systems in Jersey meet the tests of being objective or actually functioning properly.
The experience that Stuart Sivray had is, he's perhaps at the blunter end of the scale. He was simply suppressed and taken to court on trumped-up charges.
So let's carry on pretending to do the interview. They might get bored. This is the kind of how oppression happens in Jersey. You see, all kinds of little things get done to harass people. Even they don't often go to the kind of extremes that they did against me in terms of actually arresting me and putting me in prison. But the authorities use all kinds of other lesser little methods to interfere with people, kind of sabotage things. Obstruct people, make life difficult for people. If you annoy the establishment in Jersey, you won't get a job here. Your children won't get decent jobs. That's kind of how it works.